Jai Gurudev. A very good evening to one and all present here. In the words of Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, a leader desires nothing from you except your well-being and progress on the path. I am Krishnendu Roy from Sri Sri Academy, Kolkata. We have gathered here today on the occasion of Indian Navy Day. Indian Navy Day is celebrated on the 4th of December every year to recognize the achievements and the role of the Indian Navy in the country. On this day, we pay our tribute to the gallant martyrs of the War of 1971. Indian Navy Day commemorates Operation Trident and remembers all those who fought fearlessly against enemy forces. Today is the 50th anniversary of the 1971 war, and this year's theme is the Indian Navy, combat ready, credible, and cohesive. We bow our heads in respect to all the Indian Navy personnel, the veterans, and their families who have sacrificed so much for the country. We salute their dedication and bravery. Now, I would like to extend a hearty welcome to our Honorable Chairman, Commodore H.G. Harsha. Sir, we are honored to have you with us today. I would also like to welcome our trustee, Ms. Jana Desai, the academic head, Ms. Rama Venkatesh, all the principals, coordinators, and teachers, and all the parents and students who are a part of this program. We look forward to an engaging interaction with our Honorable Chairman, Commodore H.G. Harsha. Sir, the valor and courage of the Indian Navy fills us with pride, and we are hopeful that this session will bring to life not only the stories of courage and sacrifice, but also the technical and strategic planning involved in battle. Over to you, Anya.
Thank you, Krishnendu. Greetings to one and all present here. I am Anya Mishra from Sri Sri Academy, Kolkata. Commodore H.G. Harsha served the Indian Navy as a nuclear submariner in various positions, including Director, Naval Technical Group, and DGM, before retiring as Commodore in 2008. Since then, his contribution to the mainstream society has been an eclectic mix of responsibilities in the corporate realm as well as in the social and developmental sector. As functional domain consultant with Tata Consultancy Services from 2008 to 2018, he was instrumental in the design, development, integration, and testing of control systems for complex underwater platforms on mill grade hardware. Actively involved in the art of living activities since 2001, he has held key positions in operations, IT, and administration in the organization for over a decade. He was instrumental in the design and implementation of mobile and web based applications for national outreach being used by over 20,000 plus teachers. He is involved in numerous social projects, including river rejuvenation, model villages in collaboration with various state governments, sanitation, natural resource management and education in rural India, women empowerment, and campaigns on substance abuse. He was a member of the co-committee at the historical Art of Living Silver Jubilee celebrations at Bangalore in 2006 and the landmark Art of Living World Culture Festival at Delhi in 2016. In his last assignment, he held the post of CEO, Art of Living Social Projects, and chairman of the NGO Vyakti Vikas Kendra. As chairman and managing trustee, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar Vidya Mandir Trust, Commodore H.G. Harsha brings his expertise and experience to strengthen the vision of taking the group of SSRVM institutions to a whole new level of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya, for that comprehensive introduction to Commodore H.G. Harsha. We have been waiting eagerly for this evening all across SSRVM schools. Sir, we would request you to address the students.
Thank you, Krishnendu and Anya. Very kind of you for all the nice words that you have said about me. And I'm indeed delighted to be with you all today. The entire fraternity of the SSRVM and the teachers and the students and the trustees all over. Today is the 50th anniversary of the Operation Trident. It's been 50 years since we set the Karachi ablaze on the 4th of December. Ever since 4th of December is being held as the Navy Day, and we celebrate with great amount of happiness, and the amount of bravery that was shown was always recollected, and we enjoy in those wonderful moments. Today, in this area, in these times of COVID, there is a very subdued celebration that is going on this 50th anniversary. However, with the virtual presence, the entire celebration is going in the Navy, and I can see it's happening here as well. So it's a delight to be with you all. So the 1 hour that we have today, I propose that I do the talking first and explain to you today, because most of you are students and would like to know what Indian Navy is all about. I will spend some time, and then I will take on a few questions. And I suppose whatever gap is left will be filled in by the questions. So to start with, you know, in 1914, there was a United States naval officer called Alfred Mahan, Alfred Thayer Mahan. He was known for his contemporary war-sightedness. He had built a wonderful war plan and strategy to how to operate on seas. He is considered one of the major proponents of the sea warfare. He had said that he who conquers the sea will rule the world. And so did our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, also said, to be secure on land, we must be supreme at sea. So you see, whoever has been dominating in the sphere of the sea has always been a very dominant force in this world. A few years back, if you see, the British Empire spread all over the world because of their extensive naval powers, and they were managing to have the colonials spread all over the world. Our own Shivaji was one of the first proponents of the warfare in Indian waters, and his admiral Kanhoji Angre, on whose name today there is a naval base in Bombay, in Mumbai. And we hold him in great esteem because the first warfare in India was set through Kanhoji Angre, and even the first of the warships were made in the coast of Ratnagiri. So Navy is not new to Indian context. We have been having it right from the beginning. But looking at the geographical presence of India into the Indian Ocean, it's a wonderful stretch of our peninsula into the Indian Ocean. It is called a geographical gift. Like we have Himalayas on the north, the Indian Ocean is a great gift to our country. We have 7,500 kilometers of coastline. In fact, it is the biggest border that India has today. The two other borders that we share, and which are right now causing us a great amount of concern, is on the east and the west. They are considerably less as compared to these enormous 7,500 kilometers of coastline. And rightfully, a nation would be looking at developing the sea powers. But for the economic constraints and the pressures on the east and west, our focus has been, the nation's focus has been on the land-based adversities. But to put it strongly, that the entire sea resources that are held close to the peninsula, the United Nations Conventions on the Laws of the Sea says that 12 nautical miles on abutting the seashore are the territorial waters. Now, these territorial waters are such that any foreign naval powers coming into these 12 nautical miles will be considered an act of aggression and will be dealt with accordingly. So these are exclusively ours. I mean, they are territorial waters. Nobody can come into it without the permission of the government. Going ahead, 200 nautical miles away from the coast is called the exclusive economic zone. All the sea resources that are there, whether it is oil or mineral resources are belonging to the nation to which it is abetting. So 200 nautical miles of the exclusive economic zone is also a part of the Indian resource. However, the transit of foreign vessels is permitted, but the resources are exclusively of India. So you have these kind of resources to take care of. You have to look after the adversities that are trying to make inroads into the country. For these purposes, we have the Indian Navy. Just to tell you, the amount of trade that happens on the sea is close to 11 billion tons per year. You know, if you spread it to the present population of the world, it comes to almost 1.5 tons per person. And it's a $14 trillion US dollars economy that is at sea at all times during this one year's time. So this is the cheapest mode of transporting on this planet, and a huge number of vessels are there at all times, and these lanes need to be secure. We call this the sea lanes of communications. So these sea lanes of communications are to be guarded so that the consumer items and the essential requirements that come from various different countries and the exports that happen from our countries are done on these sea lanes of communications. It is the duty of Navy to ensure that these sea lanes of communications are always protected and ensure that there are no disruptions. So what does Indian Navy do? So today Indian Navy has got a tagline which says Har Kaam Desh Ke Naam. So everything that is being done is in the name of the nation. And we also have a motto in the Navy called Shano Varuna. Shano Varuna means may the Lord Varuna, the Lord of the ocean, be auspicious to us at all times. So with things, Navy goes into operations, and Navy basically operates in 4 distinct roles. The first of the roles is the military role. The military role is to ensure that there are no adversaries coming on to us, and we also do a little bit of a posturing. So if any country is acting little not to our requirements, we do a little bit of posturing by going in front of their territories. We do our exercise to demonstrate our firepower. As we speak today, I mean, about in the month of November, we had this Malabar exercise in the Arabian Sea and in the Bay of Bengal, wherein we had the navies of United States, Australia, Japan, and Indian Navy. They got together and we did interoperability exercises, and we had the aircrafts, the ships, and the submarines operating together. So this demonstrates the sea powers that we have, and it is very essential in these times to demonstrate our firepower. The second role of the Navy is for diplomatic. It is our ships are able to sail to the different ports of all the friendly nations. We demonstrate our culture. We show what the Navy is capable there. We meet those persons, and the exchange of culture happens through our ships. And this is a very fine bonding that happens whenever we are there. I've been fortunate enough to go to a multiple number of these countries, and it is an excellent way of building up friendship between the nations. And we have a lot of nations sending us their Navy vessels to our ports, and we treat them with great amount of dignity and pride. The third role that we have is of constabulary. Of late, we have a whole lot of piracy that is going on in the at seas, especially in the Gulf of Aden, near Djibouti and the Strait of Hormuz. These are the places where we have to show our presence to make sure these kind of activities are brought to the minimum. To this, for this exercise, we also have in the Indian Coast Guard, which helps us. So the Indian Navy, along with the Indian Coast Guard, do the constabulary work. And the fourth role that the Navy does is the benign role. Whenever there is an act of God, there is a floods, there is tsunami, and you'll find the Indian Navy personnel on the job. Even in fact, they were there for transporting some of the personnel who were affected by COVID in different nations. They were brought back to our country. And this is one of the roles of the Navy as well. Having talked about the roles, I will just go across to say that this is one service which is existing in 3 dimensions. The Indian Navy operates on the surface of the sea. We are on the air through our aircrafts, and we are also under the water through our submarines. So it is a truly 3-dimensional service with a variety of equipment, a variety of vessels, and it's a wonderful service to be in. To help us in this activities of various ships, we have different branches of the Navy, like the executive branch, which does all the maneuvering of the ships and firing of the calculating the combat aspects. We have the technical aspects to look after the turbines, the entire engines of the ships. Then we have electricals who look after the entire radar, sonars, power generations, and the weapon systems. Then we have logistics, medicines, education who do all the training, naval armament, then information technology, and then we have the naval architects, the pilots, observers, and the ATC. The whole gamut of people. They all come together and do their functions, and they are all trained to do that. And they come they are partly in the officer cadre and partly in the sailor cadre. And today we have, I'm so glad to say that even when I was in services, the first of the women got inducted, and it was initial days were a little difficult, but the Navy has got onto it so beautifully that the women force are just merging within the entire community as if there was never a change. And their presence has actually improved the entire efficiency in terms of our combat capabilities as well. The ships are of different kinds. You know, they have the aircraft carrier, which carries the aircrafts into the middle of the seas. The basic function of the aircraft carrier is to be able to launch these aircrafts from the sea. Just to give you an example, if a aircraft takes off from Mumbai or Goa, it has a limitation on the range. It cannot go beyond. So just imagine that it is from Mumbai, it can go up to 200 kilometers max. It has to come back because of the fuel limitations. But if the same thing is done on an aircraft carrier, it can go further. It can even go to Strait of Hormuz and do the attacks, or even go to Karachi up to that and do it. So that is the advantage of an aircraft carrier. Then we have the destroyers. This is next in size, frigates, patrol vessels, missile boats, fast action crafts, amphibious for landing of various troops onto the beaches when we are doing assaults. Then we have the submarines, which go underwater, another big deterrent and a big threat to any enemy. The submarines are also coming in 2 types. One is the conventional and one is the nuclear. And there are phenomenal advantages of a nuclear submarine. Nuclear submarine can stay underwater for unlimited time. The limitation is only in terms of manpower, how long they can sustain, because the nuclear power can continue for years together. Then we have the aircraft, the fighter aircrafts, the search and rescue vessels in terms of helicopters, and then we have attack helicopters as well. The rest of the time, the Navy does training and training and training. There is a saying, you know, in the Navy or in fact everywhere, that the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. And we take this adage very seriously. In every ship, at any given point of time, it is always, we go to sea, do our exercises and with other ships and keep ourselves fit so that when time is required, we are able to deliver what the nation wants. Our shore establishments is full of recruitment at all times, and they are taking on people for getting into the services, because the whole time a lot of people are retiring as well, and we want the forces to be young. In all our officers cadre, the one thing that comes in all our shore establishment, a great principle called the Chetwood principle is given. It's a Field Marshal Chetwood, a British officer, army officer. And what he said was exactly being followed right now, even today. It says, and it is printed in all our training establishments, it says, the safety, the honor, the welfare of your country comes first, always and every time. The honor, welfare, and comfort of the men that you command comes next. Your own ease, comfort, safety come last, always and every time. And this is the system that we follow all over, and it's a wonderful divisional system. In fact, how we connect up with our sailors, how we connect with our men is through these principles, so that we are in touch with them and we build a great bonding. We're a big family in a ship, and it's a great time whenever we are not at seas. The amount of recreational facilities that are given and how it is utilized is really worth visiting once. And I request, whenever you get time, generally in this period of time, in the first week of December, we have something called the Families Day, where everybody is called on board. They are taken on to the sea to demonstrate what life at sea can be. Talking about life at sea, it is a unique experience to be under the vast openness of the sea, to see those sunsets, sunrises. It actually shows you how less we are on this planet, how little we are. And it belittles you, humbles you at all times, because a sea in its fury can be the worst. So we always keep telling ourselves, never underestimate the sea. The sea is something you need to respect. And when you give a respect to the sea, you are looked after. The entire experience of mine in the 30 years that I spent, whether it be in submarines or when I was in the aircraft carrier, has been very, very memorable. I would like to say that if given a chance today, I would like to go through the journey all over again as a naval officer. So with these things, I will just end my monologue, and I'll open up for a discussion with my students. And prior to that, after the first question, I will also request the tech team to show 2 video clips of what Indian Navy is. So over to you. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, that was very enlightening indeed. The students are very curious to know about how Navy is. And I would request Ankita to ask her first question.
Jai Gurudev sir, my name is Ankita Madrewar. I am from SSRVM Latur. सर, आपके लिए मेरा पहला सवाल है, भारतीय नौसेना अपनी ताकत बढ़ाने के लिए कौन-कौन से कदम उठा रही है?
हाँ, तो भारतीय नौसेना जब से वो शुरू हुई थी, तब से उनका गति चलता ही आ रहा है, और हम अपनी जो ताकत है, वो हमारी ताकत है, वो शिप्स, सबमरीन्स और एयरक्राफ्ट। तो हमारी जो एयरक्राफ्ट और शिप्स की जो स्ट्रेंथ है, वो बढ़ती ही जा रही है। इस वक्त मेरे ख्याल से 150 के आसपास की हमारे पास शिप की स्ट्रेंथ है, और मैंने अभी कुछ पूछताछ भी किया कि कुछ 41 शिप्स जो हैं वो अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन भी हैं। तो स्ट्रेंथ तो हमारा बढ़ता ही जा रहा है। हमारा अभी न्यूक्लियर फोर्स भी बढ़ रहा है, न्यूक्लियर सबमरीन्स भी आ गए हैं, और हमारे पास अभी रिकॉनाइसेंस एयरक्राफ्ट भी आ गया है, और हमारे पास ये बड़े बड़े लैंडिंग क्राफ्ट भी आ गए हैं। सो द स्ट्रेंथ इज एज इट इज इंक्रीजिंग, एंड देयर इज नेवी इज नॉट एक साल के बारे में नहीं सोचती है हमारी नेवी कुछ 10-15 साल के आगे भी सोचती है, क्योंकि एक शिप बनाने के लिए उतना टाइम लगता है, 7-8 साल लगते हैं। बड़ा शिप बनाने के लिए 10 साल भी लगता है। तो हमें कुछ 20 साल के आगे तक सोचना पड़ता है, और हमारी जो प्लानिंग टीम है वो इसमें सतर्क रहती है, और हमेशा इस पे काम करते रहती है कि कौन सा नया टेक्नोलॉजी लाए, कौन सी नई तरह की शिप्स और सबमरीन्स को लाए जो हमारी क्षमता है उसको और बढ़ा सके।
थैंक यू सर। सर, आपके लिए मेरा दूसरा सवाल है, भारत समुद्री डाकुओं से अपने व्यापारिक मार्गों की सुरक्षा कैसे करता है?
हमारी जो सुरक्षा है वो हमारी ताकत है वो शिप्स ही है। तो हमारे पास बड़े बड़े यंत्र होते हैं कि जो सर्वेलेंस रेडार बोलते हैं जिसको, और हमारे पास इलेक्ट्रॉनिक वॉरफेयर के भी जो अलग अलग इक्विपमेंट होते हैं जिससे हम पता चलते हैं कि हमें किस तरह से हमारे पास से कोई दुश्मन आ रहा है या कोई भी टेररिस्ट आ रहा है, तो उसकी हम रेडियो की करते हैं और उसके ऊपर जो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक वॉरफेयर होता है उनकी जो यंत्र यूज कर रहे हैं उसको हम पता कर सकते हैं कि वो किस दिशा से आ रही है। और हमारी जो वॉच में रहते हैं, मतलब शिप्स में जो सेलर्स होते हैं, वो हर वक्त अपने जो वॉच पे सुनते रहते हैं कि क्या हो रहा है अलग अलग फ्रीक्वेंसी पे, और हमारे इंटेलिजेंस भी है। तो ये सब चीज मिलके हम अपने आप में एक सतर्क शक्ति है और हम किसी भी बल पे का मुकाबला कर सकते हैं।
थैंक यू सर।
Yeah, so if you can show the clip, Adarsh.
New India, a trusted regional power, an aspiring economic powerhouse, can no longer neglect the sea. The Indian Navy builds trust and bridges with our maritime neighbors in the Indian Ocean region, while maintaining a keen gaze on matters affecting India's national security. Going forward, India, a friend with friends and a merciless foe to our enemies. We must never forget that for India, the sea is where it starts. Therefore, the Indian Navy will forever be combat ready, credible, and cohesive.
Duty called me to the ocean to ride its waves and protect our waters, to prowl beneath its surface and seek the enemy, to take wing from the waters and attack from above. In return, the ocean gave me opportunities to discover capabilities I never knew I had, to inspire me for battle, to earn the respect of my country. The Navy gives you more.
On the turbulent waters of the ocean, I stand firm in my country's defense. In the ocean's deepest depths, I roam unfettered. And high above the oceans, I bring my enemy down. As limitless is the ocean, so are my opportunities to make a career out of a calling, to serve the nation with honor, to succeed in battle and in life. Navy gives you more.
The Navy gives me responsibility.
The Navy gives me respect.
The Navy gives me recreation.
The Navy gives you more.
The Navy gives me purpose.
The Navy gives me pride.
The Navy gives me progress.
The Navy gives you more. You think you've seen it all? Think again. Behind the silence of the deepest oceans lies the strength of a mighty force. A force deep in the dark and unknown, living with courage and integrity, silently at the helm of a mighty submarine. You think you've seen it all? Think again. Behind the silence of the deepest oceans lies the strength of a mighty force. A force whose bravest rise from the darkest depths when the world sleeps. Far away from city lights, proudly for the glory of white.
Behind the silence of the deepest oceans lies the strength of a mighty force. A force whose bravest rise from the darkest depths when the world sleeps. Far away from the city lights, proudly for the glory of white.
Thank you very much. That was two clips of the Navy, which shows the capabilities of the Navy in all three dimensions. So we'll get on with the next question, if there is one.
Thank you very much, sir. The next question is from Saurabh. Over to you, Saurabh.
Jai Gurudev, good evening, sir. I am Saurabh from SSA Kollam. I hope you are fine. And my question to you is, what made you choose Navy as a career, and what, according to you, is the most important quality one should possess to join the Naval Force? Now, how did your family feel about you joining the service?
Yeah. So I am a first generation service officer in my family. There has been no one before me. And so as a child, I was always more attracted towards physical play and areas like that. And I was very active in my school time. But when I joined the college in my engineering, my college was not so well endowed for all the physical activities. So it was all the time books and books and books. So I spent all my college time only reading. But back of my mind, I always wanted to say, once I get out of this place, I must be able to do my physical activities as well. And I knew the armed forces do give such an experience. And sure enough, in the fourth year of my engineering, I did get the campus interview came to my college, and I just went for it and passed my SSB and got selected. And unfortunately, that scheme called the university entry scheme is not there anymore. In fact, I got paid for my final year classes from the Navy, but now it doesn't exist. Now there's only a different scheme. Yeah, how did my family feel? Yes, having lost out my father very early, my mother was the only one from whom I had to take the permission, and she was quite reluctant to let me go into the services. And but then there were many good advices coming from all over, saying that this is a very honorable job and you should let your son go. And she finally relented to let me go. And I don't think she had any regrets for that, because time and again she visited me in different places, and she was very happy to see the conditions of living, the quality of life, and the entire respect that one gets out of being in the armed forces. So it's a wonderful life. I would, my children, my wife, everybody endorses the time that we spent was the best time of our lives up till now. So it continues. These things are ingrained. Once a service officer, you always continue to remain service minded.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, now we move on to our next question. The next question is from Praher.
Good evening, sir. My name is Praher Ora and I am from SRVM Ahmedabad. मेरा आपसे सवाल यह है कि यदि भारतीय नौसेना में किसी को शामिल होना है तो उसे किन चरणों का पालन करना है? भारतीय नौसेना में शामिल होने के लिए मूल योग्यताएं क्या है?
हाँ, ये एक बहुत ही अच्छा सवाल है, क्योंकि आप लोग सब छात्र हैं और आपको ये जान के बहुत खुशी होगी कि इंडियन नेवी या इंडियन आर्म फोर्सेस में ज्वाइन करने के लिए कोई स्पेशल क्वालिटीज की जरूरत नहीं है. यू हैव टू बी फिजिकली फिट एंड मेंटली अजाइल. ये दो चीज है तो आपको, एंड यू शुड बी, टू जॉइन द नेवी यू शुड बी इन द साइंस स्ट्रीम ऑफ योर व्हाटएवर यू आर डूइंग. आर्ट्स के लिए एक और जगह है, उसमें सिर्फ म्यूजिक ब्रांच में ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं, लेकिन बाकी सब ब्रांच जो है उसके लिए साइंस स्ट्रीम एसेंशियल है. तो दो तीन तरह के मेथड्स हैं जहां से आप जा सकते हैं नेवी को ज्वाइन करने के लिए. एक तो है 12वीं पास करने के बाद. तो 12वीं पास करने के बाद आपको इंडियन नेवल एकेडमी में जा सकते हैं या एनडीए में जा सकते हैं. यहाँ पर 3 साल की आपकी ट्रेनिंग होगी, उसके बाद ये हो सकता है. तो और या आप कंबाइंड डिफेंस सर्विसेज एग्जाम होता है, ये ग्रेजुएट्स के लिए होते हैं, ग्रेजुएट होने के बाद. तो इन दोनों के लिए एक यूपीएससी का एग्जाम होता है. वो एग्जाम देने के बाद आपको एसएसबी बुलाया जाएगा. एसएसबी इज नथिंग बट सर्विसेज सिलेक्शन बोर्ड, और इसमें 3-4 दिन की आपकी इंटरव्यू होती है. ये इंटरव्यू इंटेलिजेंस टेस्ट, डिस्कशन टेस्ट, साइकोलॉजिकल टेस्ट, फिर इंटरव्यू होगा. ये सब पास करने के बाद आपको मेडिकल टेस्ट किया जाएगा. आप इसमें पूरे फिट हो जाएंगे तो आप ट्रेनिंग के लिए आपको बुलाया जाएगा. या एक और भी तरीका है कि अगर आप एनसीसी में बहुत दिलचस्पी रखते हैं या आपकी रुचि है, तो अगर आपको सी सर्टिफिकेट मिला है, एनसीसी की सी सर्टिफिकेट मिली है, तो आप ये एग्जाम आपको देने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. आप डायरेक्टली एसएसबी में आपको बुला सकते हैं. और ये क्या होता है, ये तो ऑफिसर्स के लिए हो गया. और अगर सेलर्स ज्वाइन करना चाहते हैं एज ए मैन, तो उनके लिए क्या है कि आपको फिजिकल प्रोफिशिएंसी टेस्ट होता है, वो आपको करना पड़ेगा, और मेडिकल टेस्ट, और एक एंट्रेंस एग्जाम है. तो उसमें आप कभी भी जा सकते हैं. उसमें एक होता है शॉर्ट सर्विस कमीशन और एक परमानेंट कमीशन. शॉर्ट सर्विस कमीशन आपको 10 साल के लिए होता है, और उसको परमानेंट कमीशन 20 से ऊपर के साल के होते हैं. तो एक पूरी करियर की जो है वो करीब 30-35 साल तक आप नेवी में काम कर सकते हैं, एंड यू कैन सुपर एनुएट. सो दीज आर दी पॉसिबिलिटीज ऑफ जॉइनिंग द नेवी.
थैंक यू सर. मेरा आपसे अगला सवाल यह है कि भारतीय नौसेना में शीर्ष एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर की खासियतें क्या है?
हाँ, ये बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट सवाल है कि एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर जो हमने बताया कि ये एक बहुत ही उत्तम श्रेणी का एक वेसल है. इतना बड़ा है ये कि इसमें कुछ 1500 या 1800 लोग रहते हैं. इसमें इसकी जो हाइट होती है, ये 15 फ्लोर की एक इमारत जो होती है उतनी बड़ी होती है. तो हम लोग नीचे जा सकते हैं 7 फ्लोर, और ऊपर 5 फ्लोर जा सकते हैं अपने लेवल के साथ. इसकी जो ये फ्लाइट डेक बोलते हैं, जहां से एयरक्राफ्ट टेक ऑफ करती है, ये तकरीबन 2 फुटबॉल फील्ड की जितनी बड़ी होती है. और ये शॉर्ट रनवे में एयरक्राफ्ट टेक ऑफ करता है और लैंडिंग करता है. ये ही एक अद्भुत साइट होती है, एक अद्भुत दृश्य होती है। ये इसको देखने से ही लगता है ये तो बहुत ही अननेचुरल है, क्योंकि इससे पहले हमने, जब मैं एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर विराट पे था, तो ये एक सी हैरियर्स नाम के एक जहाज होती थी। वो इसकी जो जेट्स हैं वो ट्रेनेबल जेट्स होते हैं। तो you can see that aircraft actually vertically take off like this and then take off like this. It looks so unnatural, but it's a wonderful piece of defense equipment, and it's got very potent. It can carry all kinds of missiles, and recovery also nowadays you have इतनी बड़ी जहाज जो जब लैंड करती है तो उसके जो होते हैं अरेस्टर वायर्स होते हैं, वो उसको रोक लेती है, क्योंकि वो अगर उसी गति में अगर आगे बढ़ी तो वो समुद्र में भी गिर सकती है। तो ये एक बहुत प्रिसाइज, जो बोलते हैं ना इसको, स्किल रिक्वायरमेंट होती है इसकी। और हमारे जो पायलट्स होते हैं ये बहुत ही ट्रेन होते हैं, और इनकी क्षमता पे हम सब नाज करते हैं। इवन हम लोग जो रहते हैं अपने नेवल ऑफिसर्स, इनको बहुत ही रेस्पेक्ट देते हैं कि दे ऑलवेज, एवरी टाइम दे फ्लाई, दे आर प्लेइंग विद द लाइफ, एंड दैट इज द स्किल दैट इज रिक्वायर्ड। Now, as regards the aircraft carrier's potent is concerned, any adversary is afraid, and is when you see an aircraft carrier, because aircraft carrier can carry the amount of threat which is impossible to meet, because it has got multiple types of aircraft, different types of weapons, and it can create a disaster wherever it goes. But the flip side of it is that it is a sitting duck, क्योंकि वो एक एरोप्लेन की ड्रेस, एरोड्रोम होता है, एयरफील्ड इन द मिडल ऑफ द सी, इट इज वर्चुअली वल्नरेबल। सो आपको ये पता होगा कि एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर अकेले कभी नहीं ट्रैवल करती है, उसके साथ में एटलीस्ट 5-6 शिप्स होते हैं जो उसकी देखभाल करते हैं और उसको सपोर्ट देते हैं। और एक दिस इज जस्ट दैट वी हैव अबाउट 7 acres of real estate in the middle of the sea. So it's a wonderful piece of equipment, and it is very essential and very potent weapon for Indian Navy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for enlightening us. Now, thank you, Prahar, for asking the question. Now we move over to Pranav.
Jai Gurudev and good evening, sir. My name is Pranav and I'm from class 7D of SSRVM School, Bangalore North. Sir, it's a privilege to have an interaction with the veteran of the armed forces, especially the Navy, sir. So, sir, I would like to ask a few questions. Sir, my first question is, how did the Navy execute Operation Trident and what difficulties did it face?
Yeah, Pranav, actually you have asked the most important question of the day, and I am very happy to answer that, because today is a day that Operation Trident is 50-year-old. Today I will speak to some of the old commanding officers who went and executed this. So it's got a little story. I'll just tell you that, the India ordered a few missile boats, OSA class missile boats bolte hain, and they were ordered from Russia, and these have got surface to surface missiles called P-15 missiles, and they've got a range of almost 50 to 60 kilometers. So when they were delivered from Russia to India, they were supposed to go to Bombay at that time, but the Bombay harbor did not have the adequate infrastructure to unload these ships which were coming on container vessels. So this facility was available in Calcutta at that time. So Indian Navy decided that we will offload these ships and we will tow it, because it cannot go on its own steam, because they were small boats, maximum range of about 200-300 kilometers. So it had to be towed. So in order to tow karke, they took the thing entire across to the Mumbai harbor. This was early 1971. And then the tension started going up in our eastern border and the western borders, and then the preparation started. Then the Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Nanda, he got this wonderful idea, and in 65 war and 62 war, Indian Navy was not a major force of any actions. So the Navy wanted to also demonstrate the firepower. So they took upon themselves to create this wonderful thing that they said they will tow these small missile boats across the Saurashtra coast. And they actually did so on the 3rd of December. They were crept along the coast to the Saurashtra, and from Saurashtra, they were towed to the mouth of harbor, almost about 40 to 50 kilometers off Karachi harbor. And then the engines of the small boats were kicked in. So they started moving towards the harbor, but the radar caught some of the vessels of the Pakistan Navy. And the first thing that was then that one of the Nirghat, I think, fired the first INS Nirghat is the name of the ship, fired the first missile, and that hit plumb on PNS Khyber, one of the frigates of Pakistan Navy, and within an hour that particular ship sank. They also got deeper into the Karachi harbor. They saw some more contact. They fired 2 of the tankers of which were in the harbor of the Karachi port. They also caught fire. And the 3rd ship took the Karachi harbor where the oil dumps were, and they fired the 4th missile on that, and it hit plumb. So that was the time the Karachi harbor was lit ablaze, and there was total chaos in the Pakistan naval headquarters. They didn't know where these missiles were coming from, and they thought it was an air attack. They didn't even know that it was coming from the sea. The amount of loss that they had just rattled Pakistan. They didn't know what happened. And right after this, these 4 ships, missile boats, turned around and very safely got into the Saurashtra coast, back into our territorial waters. This is not the end. The Operation Trident was followed by Operation Python, wherein again the similar activities were done, and more missiles were fired onto the oil dumps of Karachi harbor, and everything was blazing. And in fact, the commanding officer, after having fired those missiles, sent a message to the naval headquarters saying, "This is the best Diwali I've had in my life, seeing all the firepower there." And even today we celebrate that, and it was a wonderful day that we rejoice even today. So that was Operation Trident and Python, and as a result of this, there was a blockade in the harbor of Karachi. All the ammunitions, all the logistics requirement got stopped because all the merchant naval vessels decided that they are not going anywhere near for delivery. As a result, Pakistan's the requirements choked, and they had to surrender on an early date. And on the 16th of December, they signed the surrender in East Pakistan, and that was the end of the war. So that was a wonderful operations carried out by Indian Navy.
Thank you, sir. Those were some really interesting anecdotes. Sir, my second question is, what is the significance of the Chabahar port to the Indian Navy?
Yes. The Chabahar port is the port which is with Iran. You know, in 2016, the government of India struck a deal with the Iran, stating that we will develop the inroads of the port, the railway lines up to Afghanistan and further on our cost, on a contract basis. So the contract basis was being done last 2-3 years. What happens is that Chabahar port is strategically very important for India, because it is right next to Pakistan, and Pakistan has got 2 major ports on their coast. One is the Karachi harbor, and right next to that is Gwadar port. Gwadar port is now presently being developed by the Chinese, and the Chinese have connected it to the Belt and Roads, the initiative that they have, and they are trying to connect the entire that is the only route for China into the Arabian Sea, and through Pakistan they want to do it. Whereas our requirement is to reach Afghanistan, and the Pakistan does not allow us to let our supplies go through Pakistan to Afghanistan. So we have to do it through Chabahar port. Unfortunately, what has happened is that the Iranian government has decided that they will take on this project themselves. So India is not presently connected, but our good relations with Iran hopefully will allow us to use this port for our requirements to keep our connection with Afghanistan.
Thank you, sir. Those answers were really interesting. Thank you, sir.
Those were wonderful questions, Pranav. Over to you, Anya.
Good evening, sir. My first question is, if you could tell us about some of your most adventurous ordeals and encounters that you've faced as a naval officer.
Ananya, there are so many of them in my 30 years. So it is very difficult and each one of them is memorable. But I will try to meet those requirements very briefly. The first one is that my first memorable one was being selected as a nuclear submariner. I had to go to Russia with my family in Vladivostok. I spent 3 years there in minus 35 degrees, trying to do all the submarine ops in that chilling weather. It was very adventurous, and the training was top class, and we enjoyed every moment of our stay there. And when we brought this nuclear submarine back, we had to operate it in India. And as I told you earlier, the nuclear submarine can stay underwater forever. The only limitation is with the manpower. So we had one major such event when we were underwater for 35 days at a time. So 35 days locked in a room, in one inner hull, about 90 meters and with 7 compartments. And we seeing the same person again and again, do your watch, eat, sleep. So a lot of things happen to your mind, physically also. So a lot of things are there which keep coming up time and again. But it was a wonderful experience because it gives you that, that inner strength to do it. And when you come out after 35 days, this entire piece of land looks as if it's brand new. And we, having been not connected with the surface for such a long time, we know that it is we look much fresher than what the people who had come to receive us was. Okay, the other thing is that I did my time as the Command-Rail of INS Virat, where I could see these operations of these major experiences in various places with the aircrafts. And few operations that we had on submarines were encountering the cyclones. I remember when we were going from East Coast to the to Andamans, once we were encountering a cyclone of states level 7 and 8. Sea states have got numbers, numericals, 1, 2, 3, 4. So sea state 5 and 6 are pretty bad. So on that particular day, it was sea state 7 and 8. So we were at 40 meters. I remember we dived at 40 meters and we found that the thing was even very turbulent there and a lot of people were getting disturbed. So the commanding officer decided we'll go up to 80 meters. We went to 80 meters. Again, the turbulence was there, but less. So we decided to go up to 120 meters. At 120 meters, it was absolutely like you're on ice. No disturbance at all. So from there, at 120 meters, we went right across underneath the cyclone and reached Andaman Nicobar, absolutely as if nothing has happened. So these are the things that happens when you are there. And another thing that is that when we navigated across the Malacca Straits to South China Sea, up to Japan, South Korea, North Korea, and then reached Vladivostok. It was in the month of December. I think if I'm right, around 16th or 17th of December, we left and reached there on the 5th of January, Vladivostok. This particular thing was as if we reached that place, and for us, it was the first time. So from 60 meters, we tried to surface. And when we surfaced, the first thing that we heard was a big noise on top. And the submarine did not even come to the surface. Then we came down again and again surfaced with a higher amount of momentum. And suddenly we realized that we are on top. For us who had not witnessed operations in the climatic zones which are very, very cold, we didn't know this phenomenon because there is a thick ice which is formed on top of the ocean. And it is almost, you can actually walk on that. So you need a huge force from down below to break it open and come onto the surface. So we were about 20 kilometers from Vladivostok. That's the port that we were going to. And we came up and surfaced ourselves. We came out. It was an open expanse of total white all over us. And it was a sight to see. And the good part was that we were just stuck because we could not break the ice beyond that. So we had to wait for the icebreaker to come from the Vladivostok port and escort us back into the port, and then we handed over the submarine there. It was a wonderful experience of operating in the climatic conditions of sub-zero. And these are some of the nice experiences that we have. I can go on continuously, but I think because of time, I'll just stop it here and I'll take on the next question.
Those were quite adventurous indeed. So my next question is, what is the SOS mechanism on board and how prompt is the rescue force?
Yeah. All our vessels are capable of looking after themselves, even in case of difficulties and in case of emergencies. But what happens is, sometimes you do need support from external forces. So a ship being on the surface does send an SOS, save our souls message to the people. And if you are, depending upon where you are, how far you are away from the coast, you do get adequate response of some kind of help and support that you need. However, when it comes to submarine, it is a little more difficult because when you are stuck underwater, there is not much that you can get help from outside. You have to help yourself. So we are trained as a submariner to have a special breathing apparatus to be put on that. We have our oxygen cylinders behind us. We put a mask and the full body suit is there. And if the submarine is underwater, stuck somewhere, grounded, then we have to use the torpedo tubes which are there. A torpedo tubes is, it can actually fit only up to my shoulders, a little beyond that. So you have to really crawl yourself out of that, open the bow door and come out and surface yourself. The best part of it is that the body suit that we wear has got all the necessary requirements of food and the a boat which is attached to it, a dinghy what we call, and necessary communication equipment to connect with the outside world. So it takes you there. So we are all prepared for all contingencies at all times. So these are the issues with respect to the ship and the submarines. But when it comes to aircraft, aircraft is a very, very small piece of equipment, and when it lands into the vast ocean, it becomes very difficult to find. So a tracing of a aircraft which is lost at sea becomes that much more difficult, and there is a proper exercise of going and scanning the entire sea surface. Approximately, the area that it has gone down, and we scan literally all through that and make sure that the pilot at least is rescued. The equipment, of course, cannot be recovered, but the human life is given the paramount importance, because no matter how good an equipment that you have today, it is always the man behind it who does it. And like I just digress here to say that Indian traditions are so good, our ancient cultures are so good, that if you are into meditation, if you are into yoga, and if you are into various breathing exercises, the cohesion of the mind, body, and yourself is so good that you are able to take necessary corrective actions whenever you are in deep trouble. This we have seen when we have actually encountered difficulties and adversities in that sea. But sea, as I said, is a cruel master and a very kind master, cruel master as well as a very kind master. you have to respect it and take all the necessary precautions to be at sea.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing those pieces of information. To conclude this evening's program, I would like to express a sincere gratitude to the Honorable Chairman Commodore H.G. Harsha for having shared his valuable insights during this most meaningful interactive session. I would also like to thank our trustee, Ms. Jana Desai, the academic head, Ms. Rama Venkatesh, the principals, coordinators, teachers, students, and parents for making this evening a truly memorable one. We wish all of you a very good evening. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, thank you very much. It has been indeed wonderful to talk to all of you. And I am available should any one of you need any advice of how to join the armed forces. Please stretch out to me. I will be there to help you out at any given time. Right? Thank you so much. Jai Gurudev.